Officer Nathan Cole was on his routine patrol when he noticed something strange. A thin German shepherd chained to a park bench, its ribs showing through its matted fur. Beside it sat an old suitcase covered in faded stickers and a trembling note that read, "Please save it. It's the evidence." The moment Nathan lifted the leash, the dog didn't bark. It just stared into his eyes, as if begging him to follow where justice had been buried. Inside the suitcase, he found a clue leading to a missing mother and her child, gone without a trace for 3 days. What Nathan discovered next would unravel a web of abuse, betrayal, and courage, and prove that even in silence, love still finds a way to speak. What happened next will make you cry and believe in miracles again. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. Fog rolled thick over Redwood Springs that morning, swallowing the riverbank and turning the old park into a pale blur of white and gray. The air smelled of wet pine and frozen earth, sharp enough to sting the lungs. It was the kind of winter morning when the world seemed to hold its breath. Officer Nathan Cole, 36, guided his patrol SUV through the empty park road. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the short, dark brown hair streaked with silver and eyes the color of storm clouds. A quiet man, shaped by both the Marines and the years that followed, the kind of man who carried too much silence inside. His Navy winter sheriff's jacket rustled faintly as he reached for his thermos. Something caught his eye through the fog, an unmoving shape near a wooden bench. He slowed. Through the mist, a faint silhouette appeared. A German shepherd sitting perfectly still, chained to the leg of the bench. Nathan parked, stepped out, and the cold bit through his gloves. The park was empty. The only sound came from distant gulls and the low hum of the river. He walked closer, boots crunching lightly on the frost-covered path. The dog didn't move. It was young, maybe 2 years old, but terribly thin, ribs showing through a dirty, matted coat. Its black and tan fur was streaked with mud and scars that told of long neglect. The leash around its neck was made of a rusted chain, looped twice through a metal ring. "Hey there." Nathan's voice was calm, careful. "It's okay." The German shepherd's ears twitched, but its eyes didn't leave the fog ahead. There was no growl, no whimper, just a quiet stare that felt too human, too full of something broken. That's when Nathan saw the suitcase sitting beside the bench. It was old. Leather cracked and corners scuffed from years of travel. Stickers from faraway cities, Denver, Chicago, St. Louis, peeled at the edges. But what froze Nathan's breath was the small note tied to its handle, trembling in the wind. He crouched, steadying the paper with one gloved hand. The handwriting was jagged, hurried, and wet from the fog. "Please, save it. It's the evidence." Nathan's stomach tightened. Evidence? Of what? He looked back at the shepherd. Its collar was marked with dried blood, and the chain link had rubbed raw patches around its neck. He reached out slowly. The dog didn't resist. It simply trembled once and lowered its head. "Easy now," Nathan murmured. "You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" The faint sound of breathing came from the animal. Labored, shallow, but alive. He unhooked the chain and felt the cold metal bite through his gloves. When he stood, the dog didn't bolt. It just followed his movement with tired, glassy eyes. For a moment, Nathan stood still, feeling the soft hiss of wind slide through the empty park. It was too quiet. He'd seen this kind of silence before, after storms, after gunfire, after loss, the silence that followed, something unforgivable. He clicked on his radio. "Dispatch, this is Cole. I found a stray animal at Redwood Park. There's also an item next to it, a suitcase. Might be evidence of a crime." The voice that came back was low and half asleep. "Copy that, Cole. Shelter's closed till 10. Bring it in yourself." "Roger." He pocketed the radio and turned to the dog. "Come on, pal. Let's get you out of this cold." He opened the back door of his patrol SUV, laying down an old gray blanket from his Marine duffel. The shepherd hesitated, then climbed in slowly, bones stiff, fur wet. It curled up without a sound, eyes half closed but still watchful. Nathan bent to pick up the suitcase. The handle was sticky. The smell hit him immediately. Disinfectant, sharp and chemical, mixed with something faintly metallic. He turned it slightly under the dim streetlight, and the edge caught a smear of dried blood. He froze for a second, then whispered, "What the hell happened to you?" The wind swept across the park, cold and steady. He carried the suitcase to the passenger seat, placed it carefully beside him, and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment he just sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes on the fog-shrouded bench disappearing behind him. Something about that empty seat, the lonely chain, stirred something deep inside him. He started the engine. The hum of the heater filled the silence as snow began to drift lazily across the windshield. He checked the rearview mirror. The shepherd was watching him now, tired eyes following every move. "You need a name," Nathan said softly. "Something strong." He paused, thinking. "How about Echo? You don't speak, but somehow I can still hear you." The dog blinked once, as if accepting the name. Nathan smiled faintly. "Echo it is." He pulled onto the road, the SUV's headlights cutting a thin path through the mist. Behind him, the park vanished into white. Ahead, the road stretched toward Redwood Springs Police Department, glowing faintly under the rising sun. As he drove, the suitcase rattled once against the seat. Nathan glanced at it but didn't open it. Not yet. He'd seen enough in his years to know that sometimes answers were better left for daylight. He looked once more at the rearview mirror, at Echo lying still, eyes half closed but alive. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a case. It was a message. And somewhere in that suitcase, buried beneath the smell of disinfectant and blood, waited a truth that someone wanted to be found. The suitcase gave off the sharp scent of disinfectant and a faint trace of dried blood. Nathan carried the dog back to the station. He named it Echo, because it mirrored the silence it had endured. The morning sun crept weakly through the frosted windows of the Redwood Springs Police Department, staining the walls a dull amber. Officer Nathan Cole stood in the evidence room, his breath still faintly visible in the cold air that leaked from the vents. On the metal table before him sat the old suitcase, the same one he had found beside the bench. And beside it, the German shepherd, Echo, lay quietly on a folded blanket. The room smelled of steel, coffee, and disinfectant, the same sterile scent that clung to the suitcase itself. Nathan hesitated for a moment before unfastening the clasps. His gloves creaked as he lifted the lid. Inside, neatly arranged but aged by wear, were several items. A small USB drive, a stack of printed photographs, and a folded document. The paper partly torn and blotched with something dark. The photos were the first thing he noticed, grainy, taken in poor lighting, showing the bruised arm of a woman, a swollen wrist, and a faint glimpse of a child's toy in the background. His chest tightened. He reached for the document next. It was a property transfer form, edges ripped and stained. The signature at the bottom was shaky but legible. Lisa Green. Nathan frowned. He'd seen the name once before, briefly, in a missing person alert that had circulated across county lines just 3 days earlier. Lisa Green, age 33, nurse, missing along with her 9-year-old son and elderly mother. He turned toward Echo. "Lisa Green," he murmured. The dog, who had been lying motionless, suddenly stiffened. Its ears pricked up and it let out a low whimper that faded into a small, trembling growl. Nathan crouched beside it, resting a gloved hand on its back. "You know that name, don't you?" Echo didn't move, only blinked slowly, as if trying to piece something together from memory. Nathan straightened and called out toward the hallway. "Ramirez, you here yet?" From the doorway came a warm but teasing voice. "You still call me by my last name? It's been years, Cole." Sophie Ramirez entered the room carrying a steaming mug of coffee and a laptop under her arm. She was 34, with dark auburn hair tied back loosely and soft brown eyes that still had the same spark Nathan remembered from the academy. She wore jeans tucked into black boots, a gray turtleneck under a leather jacket, a mix of practical and effortless. Sophie had worked as a cyber forensics specialist for the department for almost 5 years now, after leaving the city to escape what she once called noise without meaning. Nathan allowed a faint smile. Old habits. You're early. I heard you found something weird in the park, she said, setting the laptop on the table. Weird always wakes me up faster than caffeine. He gestured to the suitcase. Inside, photos, documents, and this. He handed her the small black USB drive sealed in an evidence bag. You think you can take a look? Sophie tilted her head. You trust me with this? I always did, he replied without thinking. Her eyes softened for a brief second before she turned back to the equipment. All right, let's see what your mystery drive has to say. She plugged it in, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. Echo lifted its head, watching the faint glow from the laptop screen. For a few moments, only the hum of the computer filled the room. Then, faintly, a sound crackled through the speakers, static, followed by a man's voice. You think you can just walk away, Lisa? You think I won't find you? The voice was low, rough, strained with anger. Sophie froze. Nathan's jaw tightened. Play it again, he said. She did. The words repeated, this time followed by the muffled sound of a child crying somewhere in the background. Then, the recording cut off abruptly. Nathan's voice dropped. He's threatening her. Sophie leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the waveform. There are several files on this drive, different timestamps, different folders. Whoever made these recordings wanted someone to hear them. The metadata shows the last one was created 3 nights ago. That's when she disappeared, Nathan said quietly. Sophie looked up at him. You think her husband's involved? Ex-husband, Nathan corrected. Ben Green, former construction worker. Rumors says he's been mixed up with a drug ring out near Trinity Creek. No convictions yet, but plenty of whispers. Echo let out a small bark, sharp, sudden. The sound startled both of them. The dog stood now, tail stiff, gaze fixed on the laptop screen as if the voice had called something deep inside it. Nathan moved closer. It's okay, Echo. But the dog didn't relax. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, whining, ears back. Sophie's expression softened. Poor thing. Probably heard that voice before. Maybe, Nathan murmured. Maybe it remembers more than we think. He turned back to the photographs, scanning them under the light. One showed a woman's hand gripping the fur of a dog. Echo, he realized, recognizing the same scar on the paw. Another photo was of a house porch with peeling paint and a number barely visible in the corner. 1437 Maple Ridge Road. Sophie noticed it too. That's on the west side near the river. Yeah, Nathan said. Abandoned properties around there. Good place to hide something. Or someone. He picked up the phone and called dispatch requesting a unit to check the address later that afternoon. Then, turning to Sophie, he added quietly, You think you can clean up the rest of those recordings? I need to know what's on them. Give me a few hours, she said, eyes bright with focus. I'll run it through the filter. Maybe we'll catch another voice or a clue in the background. Nathan nodded. He started to gather the documents when Sophie's voice broke the silence. You look tired, Cole. More than usual. He hesitated. Just haven't slept well. The same old ghost? She asked softly. Nathan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Sophie knew about the accident, the one that had taken his wife and daughter years ago. She had been the only one he'd ever told. Yeah, he said finally. Same old ghost. Sophie reached out, resting her hand lightly on his forearm. You're not the only one who lost something. The touch lingered for a heartbeat before she withdrew, turning back to the screen. Let me finish decoding this. Go feed your partner before he decides to chew through the cables. Nathan managed a small smile. Copy that. He crouched beside Echo, opening a can of food from the evidence room's supply shelf. The dog ate slowly, still glancing toward the laptop as if wary of what it had heard. By noon, snow began to fall again outside, light and quiet. Through the frosted window, Nathan could see the main street. People hurrying past with coffee cups, unaware that inside this small building, a story of violence and desperation was unfolding piece by piece. He stood by the window for a moment, watching the snow thicken. His reflection stared back at him, a man holding on to faith by threads, standing between duty and something deeper, something personal. Behind him, Sophie called out, "Cole, you might want to hear this." He turned as the computer began to play another clip, a different recording this time, faint but clear. "You sign the papers, Lisa, or your mother and boy don't see daylight again. You understand me? You're nothing without me." Then silence. Sophie exhaled. "He's threatening her family. That's proof enough to open an investigation." Nathan's eyes darkened. "Then we start today." Echo let out a quiet sound, almost like a growl but softer, something between fear and resolve. Nathan reached down, resting a hand on its head. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll find them." Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing Redwood Springs in white, hiding both secrets and evidence beneath its calm disguise. Snow still blanketed Redwood Springs when Officer Nathan Cole sat at his desk, the glow from his monitor lighting the dark office. The department was quiet at that hour, just the low hum of radiators and the soft scratching of pens from the night shift clerks. Echo lay curled under Nathan's chair, head resting on his paws, watching the door like a sentry. Nathan typed into the state database, fingers steady despite the fatigue pulling at his eyes. The name, Lisa Green, appeared in neat blue letters at the top of the screen, followed by a photo, taken from a nursing license. She was 33, fair-skinned, chestnut hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing blue scrubs and a smile that looked worn but kind. Her occupation was listed as registered nurse, Redwood General Hospital, address 1437 Maple Ridge Road, and under dependents, two names stood out: Tommy Green, male, age 9, Martha Green, female, age 67. Nathan leaned back, rubbing his temple. 3 people missing, and all connected to the evidence in that suitcase. He printed the file, then reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Cole. Any updates on that patrol near Maple Ridge?" The voice on the other end belonged to Deputy Harold Hal Owens, a man in his late 40s with a tired drawl and a reputation for caution. "Yeah, Cole. House was dark, no vehicles, mailbox full. No sign of forced entry from the outside, but the back gate was busted. Could be nothing. Could be something." Nathan frowned. "Keep the area secure. I'll check it myself later." "You sure you want to poke that hornet's nest?" Hal said. "Rumor is Ben Green's been running with the Trinity Creek boys. If he's involved, you're walking into something nasty." "I've seen worse," Nathan said, though his voice betrayed a quiet unease. He ended the call, printing photos and reports, then glanced down at Echo. The dog's ears perked as if sensing the tension. "Guess it's just you and me again, partner," Nathan murmured. A knock came from the doorway. Standing there was Captain Raymond Holbrook, the police chief. A tall man in his late 50s, gray-haired, lean, and always impeccably dressed in a dark overcoat and tie. His face was lined from years of night shifts and cigarette smoke, and his tone carried the weight of command even when he spoke softly. "Cole," Holbrook said, stepping inside, "you've been here since dawn. You planning to sleep at your desk again?" Nathan minimized the database screen. "Trying to make sense of the Green case, sir." "The Green case?" Holbrook raised a brow. "That's not assigned to you." "Not yet," Nathan admitted, "but I think that dog we found is connected. The evidence points to something criminal, domestic abuse, maybe kidnapping." Holbrook crossed his arms. "And do you have proof or just instinct?" Nathan hesitated. "Instinct and a USB full of threats." The captain sighed. "That's not enough to open a file, Cole. You know the rules." "Then give me 48 hours. Off the record." Holbrook's eyes narrowed. "You want me to authorize an unofficial investigation?" Nathan met his gaze. "I want to find out if a mother and her child are still alive. You've seen the photo, sir. That's not fake." For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the heater. Finally, Holbrook exhaled and pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket, a reprimand form, unsigned. You've got 48 hours. You screw this up, I file this. You find something worth filing, I back you up. Deal?" Nathan nodded. Deal. As Holbrook turned to leave, he stopped at the door. "Cole," he said quietly, "I know what losing family does to a man. Don't let this case drag you back there." Nathan didn't answer. He didn't need to. When the door closed, he opened the evidence bag and pulled out the faded fabric found inside the suitcase, a woman's jacket, soft gray with a torn sleeve. He set it on the desk and looked down at Echo. "Let's see if you know her." He lowered the jacket. The shepherd sniffed once, then again, more intensely. Suddenly, Echo's tail stiffened, and he barked, a sharp, loud sound that echoed through the room. Then he barked again, claws scraping the tile as if trying to follow the scent somewhere unseen. Nathan crouched. "You remember, don't you? You know her." Echo whined softly, pacing back and forth before sitting down again, ears back, eyes full of restless focus. "Good boy," Nathan said. "That's our lead." Later that morning, Nathan drove to Maple Ridge Road, the address from the file. The sun barely broke through the clouds, leaving the snow-covered neighborhood pale and lifeless. Most of the homes looked weathered, paint peeling, mailboxes crooked, yards half buried in frost. He parked across from number 1437, a small, one-story house with drawn curtains and an overturned tricycle frozen in the yard. He got out, pulling his coat tight. Echo followed, nose low, tail rigid. Nathan walked up the front steps and tried the door. Locked. He circled around to the side window and shone his flashlight inside. The kitchen was dark but tidy, except for a broken mug on the floor and a chair knocked over near the counter. He moved around back. The gate creaked on its hinges, exactly as Hal had said. In the snow, he noticed faint footprints. 3 sizes: adult, female, small child, and heavier male, leading toward the shed. But the tracks ended halfway, as if swept away. Nathan crouched and took a photo with his phone. Someone tried to hide this. Echo sniffed the air, then barked once, staring at the shed door. Nathan slowly approached, hand resting on his holster. The padlock was snapped clean. He pushed the door open, nothing inside but tools, a stack of boxes, and a faint metallic smell. He called out softly, "Lisa? Anyone here?" Silence. He stepped outside, and heard a window creak behind him. A woman's voice called faintly from across the street. "Officer?" Nathan turned. An older woman bundled in a quilted coat stood on her porch, clutching a thermos. Her name tag from the mail slot read Mrs. Connolly. She looked to be in her early 70s, small-framed, with kind but nervous eyes. He crossed over carefully. "Ma'am, you live nearby?" "Next door," she said. "I saw the lights on again last night. Thought it was them at first, but it wasn't. No car in the drive, no dog barking. You knew the Greens?" She nodded. "Nice people. Lisa worked nights at the hospital. Her mother, Martha, took care of the boy. Tommy, sweet kid, always walking that dog of theirs." "What happened 3 nights ago?" Mrs. Connolly's face tightened. There was shouting. A man's voice. The dog barking loud, then nothing. The next morning the door was open and nobody came out. Nathan's pulse quickened. "Did you see the man?" "Just a shadow. Tall. Broad shoulders. Looked angry." He showed her a photo from the department's file. Ben Green. Her eyes widened. "That's him." Nathan pocketed the phone. "Thank you, ma'am. Stay inside. Lock your doors. If you see that man again, call this number." He handed her his card, then turned back toward the house. Echo stood by the front step, staring at the door as if waiting for permission. "We're coming back with a warrant," Nathan muttered. By the time he returned to the station, Sophie was already there, her laptop open, her face pale from lack of sleep. "You were right," she said as soon as he entered. "The audio files? They're more than just threats. There's a background hum like an air vent or generator. I matched it to building schematics near the industrial edge of town. I think they're being held somewhere underground." Nathan's stomach sank. "How far from here?" "Maybe 15 miles, she said. "I'll pinpoint it soon." He glanced at Echo, who lay by the desk, eyes following every movement. Nathan nodded slowly. Then our clock starts now, 48 hours. The afternoon light outside Redwood Springs Police Department was fading fast, snow melting into slush under the gray sky. Inside, Officer Nathan Cole sat hunched at his desk, surrounded by a small fortress of files and evidence photos. Across from him, Sophie Ramirez leaned over her laptop, her face pale from the screen's cold glow. Echo lay curled near the heater, his eyes half shut but ears twitching at every sound. Sophie finally exhaled and said, "All right, Cole, I found something." Nathan straightened. "Tell me." "There's more hidden in that USB drive," she said, plugging it into her laptop. "A folder buried in encrypted data, videos, not just audio." She clicked through lines of code until a file opened, the grainy footage flickering to life. The video showed a man pacing outside a small house at night. His shoulders were broad, his steps heavy, the glint of a gun visible in his hand. For a second, his face turned toward the light. Ben Green, mid-30s, square jaw, short-cropped hair, eyes cold as iron. He wore a black work jacket, jeans, and a silver chain around his neck. Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's him." Sophie nodded grimly. "The metadata shows this was filmed outside Lisa's house a week before she disappeared. Listen." Ben's voice came through the speakers, rough and furious. "You think you can hide from me, Lisa? You think you can take what's mine and just walk away?" The sound of something slamming, a door, maybe, echoed faintly in the background. Then static. Echo shot to his feet, fur bristling, a low growl vibrating from deep in his chest. His teeth bared as if the man on screen were standing right there. Nathan reached down and rested a hand on his neck. "Easy, Echo. It's just a recording." But the dog's body remained stiff, tail rigid, eyes locked on the dark monitor. Sophie closed the laptop, her voice quieter now. "That reaction's not nothing. He's seen that man before." Nathan nodded slowly. "And if that bastard's still around, we'll find him." Sophie turned the screen back toward herself. "There's GPS data embedded in the videos. I ran it through the tracking software. It points to a location about 10 miles south near the Trinity River Bend." Nathan frowned. "Trinity River? That's not exactly family country." "No," Sophie said. "It's gang country. The same area DEA flagged last year for meth movement. I think Ben's been working for them." Nathan rose, pulling on his winter jacket and checking his weapon. "Send me the coordinates." "You're not going there alone," she said sharply. He looked at her. "I won't. I've got Echo." Sophie gave him a flat stare. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "I don't have time to wait for a warrant," Nathan said. "If Lisa and her family are alive, every minute counts." Sophie's voice softened. "You can't keep saving people like it'll make up for the ones you lost." He froze. For a heartbeat, the air between them felt heavier than the snow outside. Then he looked away. "Send me the location, Ramirez." Sophie sighed, typing quickly. "Done. And Cole, watch your back." The drive south felt endless. Rain began halfway through, turning to sleet as he crossed the narrow bridge into Trinity Valley. The place looked forgotten. Abandoned cabins, rusted trucks, and the faint smell of oil mixed with wet pine. Echo sat alert in the back seat, occasionally pressing his nose to the glass. The GPS beeped softly as they reached the destination, an old farmhouse sitting crooked on a muddy stretch of road. The porch sagged, and broken shutters flapped against the wind. The windows were dark, except for one faint light flickering through a crack in the boards. Nathan parked 100 yards away, cut the engine, and stepped out. His boots sank into the wet earth. "Stay close," he whispered. Echo followed silently, tail low, body tense. The door creaked open with a gentle push. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and rot. Beer cans littered the floor. On the kitchen wall hung a single photo, Lisa, her son, and her mother smiling. But the man's face in the frame had been torn clean out. Nathan's chest tightened. He raised his flashlight, scanning the room. Faint footprints tracked across the dusty floor, recent ones. He followed them to a hallway leading to a cellar door, where the padlock hung snapped in half. He crouched, listened. A faint sound came from below, metal scraping concrete. He drew his weapon, opened the door, and descended. The basement was dim, lit only by a single hanging bulb. In the corner sat a man tied to a chair, wrists bound with duct tape, eyes wild. His clothes were soaked, his face bruised, a cut running across his cheek. Nathan lowered his gun slightly. "You alive?" The man nodded weakly. "Please, don't shoot. I'm not one of them." "Name?" "Derek Wells," he stammered. I worked for Ben Green. He paid me to move crates from the docks. Said it was construction supplies, but it wasn't. It was meth." "Where is he now?" Nathan demanded. Derek swallowed hard. "I don't know. He's been moving between the river and the old quarry. Said he had to keep them quiet until she signed the papers. The woman, and her mom, and the boy. He said the dog ruined everything." Nathan's stomach went cold. "Where's the quarry?" "About 6 miles west," Derek whispered. "The Hartley quarry. They use the tunnels down there. Nobody goes near it anymore." Echo growled again, sensing the tension. Nathan untied Derek, handing him a flashlight. "Stay put. Wait for backup. If you run, I'll find you." Derek nodded, rubbing his wrists. "You don't get it, man. He's dangerous. He doesn't care who dies." "Neither do I," Nathan said quietly, then turned to leave. Rain poured harder as Nathan radioed. Back to the station. "Cole here. I've confirmed Ben Green's connection to the Trinity gang. He's using Hartley Quarry as a base. Possible hostages. I'm moving in." Static crackled. Then came Captain Holbrook's voice, sharp and angry. "Cole, stand down. You don't have a warrant, and you don't have backup." "I don't have time," Nathan replied. "You've got 1 hour," Holbrook said after a pause. "If you're not out by then, I'm pulling a team to drag you home." "Understood." Nathan slipped the radio into his coat. The headlights cut through sheets of rain as he climbed back into the SUV. Echo shook off the water, watching him with alert, determined eyes. Nathan looked at him in the rearview mirror. "You ready for this?" The dog's ears perked, head tilting slightly. "Good," Nathan murmured, starting the engine. "Because I think tonight we'll find out what kind of man Ben Green really is." The road toward the quarry was narrow and winding, hemmed by trees that bent under the weight of snow. The world outside the headlights was nothing but darkness and rain. Nathan drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel, Echo steady at his side. Somewhere ahead, beneath the roar of the river, waited the echoes of cruelty, and maybe if they were lucky, a family still holding on to life. The thought alone kept him going. The night over Hartley Quarry hung heavy with mist and the smell of wet limestone. The storm had rolled east, leaving behind a slick world of black puddles and glistening mud. Officer Nathan Cole parked his SUV at the edge of the old service road and killed the engine. The headlights died, and silence swallowed the valley, save for the distant rumble of water spilling through the gorge. Nathan stepped out, adjusting the collar of his thick patrol coat. The cold cut deep, the kind that seeped through fabric and into bone. His breath came out in short clouds. Echo, his German shepherd, hopped out from the back seat, landing softly on the wet ground. The dog's coat glistened in the faint light of the moon, nose already pressed to the air, sniffing. "There," Nathan murmured, following Echo's line of sight toward the ridge. Half hidden behind a row of crooked pine trees stood a weather-beaten farmhouse, its roof sagging and one shutter hanging loose like a broken limb. The property was surrounded by rusted fencing, and the faint gleam of a collapsed windmill reflected off a puddle near the porch. Nathan's boots crunched quietly as he approached. Echo moved ahead, tail low, sniffing along the path that wound to the front door. There were fresh footprints in the mud. 2 sets, one large and one smaller, uneven, as though the person had been dragging weight. He crouched to examine them. "Recent," he muttered. "Within the hour." The front door hung ajar. Nathan raised his flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. The smell hit him immediately. Stale beer, rot, and something sharp underneath. Blood. The living room was in ruins. A table overturned, broken bottles scattered, and on the far wall a smear of brownish red. He followed it with the beam to where it disappeared behind a curtain. The light caught a handprint, smeared low, as if someone had tried to crawl. Echo whined softly, his hackles rising. "Easy, boy," Nathan whispered, moving deeper into the house. The floorboards creaked under his boots. His flashlight caught glimpses of a life abandoned. Photographs, a child's toy car, a woman's scarf half buried under dust. But there was no sign of life. Only echoes. They reached the kitchen, where the smell of bleach clung thick in the air. The linoleum floor had been wiped clean except for one spot under the sink, a faint streak of reddish-brown that led to a trap door half hidden under a collapsed shelf. Nathan froze. His light fell on the latch, new metal bolts fixed into old wood. Someone had secured this recently. Echo took a step forward, nose twitching, and then he barked, once, twice, each louder than the last. His claws scratched the floor as he pressed toward the door, body tense, tail straight as a rod. Nathan crouched, pressing his ear to the wooden surface. For a long moment there was nothing but silence. Then, faintly, he heard it. Movement, a slow, dragging sound. His pulse quickened. He reached for his shoulder mic. "Cole to dispatch. Possible suspects or victims beneath the farmhouse at Hartley Quarry. Request immediate backup and mobile unit." Static. He tried again, switching frequencies. "Dispatch, do you copy?" The radio hissed with noise, then went dead. The quarry's rock walls were blocking the signal completely. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. He glanced at Echo, whose gaze remained fixed on the hatch. The shepherd began to growl, a low, guttural warning that made the hairs on Nathan's neck rise. "There's someone in there," he whispered. He checked his weapon, flashlight, and utility knife, then placed his hand on the latch. The metal was slick with condensation. He could feel the faint vibration beneath the wood. Movement, slow but unmistakable. Nathan took a breath. "All right, partner. We're doing this alone." Echo's eyes met his, amber in the flashlight glow, as if understanding. The dog's tail was still, his stance ready. Nathan tightened his grip on the latch and exhaled through his teeth. "On 3, he said quietly. 1, 2. Echo let out a sudden bark, sharp, urgent, filled with warning. Nathan froze. Something shifted under the door, fast. A faint whisper, like the scrape of metal on stone. "Movement confirmed," he breathed. Voice low, his heart hammered against his ribs. He pressed the latch slowly, careful not to make sound. The old hinges groaned faintly, releasing a thin whiff of cold, stale air. A smell came up with it. Mildew, rust, and something far worse. Echo stepped back, barking once, his growl deepening. The sound from below stopped instantly. Nathan raised his gun. "If anyone can hear me down there, this is the police. Identify yourself." No response. Only silence. He shifted his weight, preparing to lift the hatch. And then his radio crackled faintly. A single voice came through, fragmented but familiar. Sophie Ramirez. Then, "Are you there? We've got a problem." He pressed the transmit button quickly. "Sophie, signal's weak. Say again." "System's been compromised," her voice came through, broken by static. Someone's inside the precinct network. They're deleting the green case files, all of them." Nathan blinked. "What? How?" "I don't know," she snapped. "It's not remote, it's internal. I'm locking the data manually, but they're faster. Whoever it is, they know exactly what they're doing." Nathan's eyes flicked back to the hatch. Echo was trembling now, muscles tight, the growl barely held in check. "Listen to me," Sophie said, her voice trembling now. "If you found anything, any evidence, do not upload it. They'll trace it and wipe it too. Keep it offline." Then the line went dead. Nathan stood motionless, staring down at the door, feeling the weight of everything closing in. The case, the silence, the trap beneath his feet. Somewhere under the farmhouse, something moved again. Echo barked once, sharp and loud, claws scraping the wood. Nathan steadied his gun. "All right," he whispered. "We do this the hard way." He knelt beside the hatch, pressed his ear to the cold wood one last time, and heard it clearly this time, a faint sound that made his stomach turn. A voice, weak, hoarse, crying for help. Nathan clenched his jaw. Backup was gone, radio was dead, and whoever controlled the precinct's systems didn't want this evidence to surface. He looked at Echo. "We're not waiting." And, with a single motion, he ripped the latch free and yanked open the door. The darkness below swallowed the beam of his flashlight. "Echo," he whispered, "stay close." Then he descended into the black. The air beneath the farmhouse was colder than Nathan expected. So cold it seemed to cling to his breath. He descended the rickety wooden stairs with his flashlight in one hand and his weapon in the other, every step creaking beneath his boots. Echo followed close behind, his nails tapping lightly against the wood, his ears pivoting toward every sound. The darkness felt almost solid, swallowing the narrow beam of light before it could reach the walls. Nathan paused halfway down, listening. The faint dripping of water echoed somewhere deeper within, rhythmic and steady, like a heartbeat. Then, a sound, a soft clatter. He froze. His muscles tightened as he aimed the flashlight forward. The beam fell across the dirt floor, revealing fragments of an old wooden table, shattered jars, and the scattered remains of canned food. A rat darted into a crack in the wall, its movement stirring the dust. The smell was sharp, metallic, moldy, mixed with something bitter, like spoiled fruit and bleach. He took the final step down, boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The light caught on something glinting near the corner, a chain bolted into the stone wall, its links corroded with rust. A short length of rope hung from it, frayed and stiff. He crouched, touching it carefully. The fibers were fresh, still carrying the faint scent of sweat and fear. "Someone was down here recently," he murmured. Echo sniffed along the floor, circling the perimeter. The shepherd's low growl vibrated through the quiet space. His tail rose, fur bristling. Then he trotted toward the far corner and began pawing at a pile of old cloth. Nathan crossed over, brushing aside the debris. Beneath it lay an empty food can, tipped over beside a half-eaten piece of bread, now black with mold. Whoever had been kept here hadn't been gone long. Then Echo's nose pressed against something caught on a splinter of wood, a single strand of hair, bright gold, glimmering faintly in the light. Nathan's breath hitched. He took out a small evidence bag and sealed it carefully. "Lisa Green," he whispered, or maybe the kid. Echo barked softly, as if in confirmation. As Nathan stood, something in the corner of the room caught his eye, a faint red flicker. He turned the light toward it, heart quickening. It wasn't a reflection. It was a small red LED, glowing steadily behind a stack of boxes. He moved closer, brushing away the dust, and saw it clearly now. A hidden camera, no bigger than his palm, half buried in debris but still active. Nathan's pulse surged. "What the hell?" He crouched, inspecting the device. The casing was scratched but intact. He pulled out a small screwdriver from his belt and pried the camera loose from its mount. A tiny whirring noise emitted from the inside before it powered down. Echo growled again, his head snapping toward the shadows. Nathan tensed, sweeping his flashlight across the room, but there was no one else there. Only the echo of their breathing. He turned the device in his hand, examining its backplate. Stamped in faded silver letters were the words, Evo Camtech 9. He froze. The name hit him like a bullet. That was the same model used in the Edison chemical plant case 3 years ago. The case that had destroyed his family. The images came flooding back uninvited. His wife, Claire, her trembling voice in the hostage video, the static lines across the feed as the building exploded. The same brand name blinking in the lower corner of the screen. Nathan's grip tightened until his knuckles turned white. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus. "Not now," he muttered under his breath. "Stay sharp." He popped open the back of the camera. Inside was a micro SD card. He slipped it into an evidence bag and stowed it inside his jacket. If the device was still recording, it could hold proof. Proof of captivity, coercion, and maybe even who was behind this. Echo pressed against his leg, whining softly. Nathan knelt, rubbing the dog's neck. "We'll get them, buddy," he whispered. "I promise." He stood again, scanning the walls. There were faint scratch marks, fingernails raking against the stone, desperate lines carved in panic. He traced one with his glove and noticed something etched beneath the grime, a faint, trembling scrawl. "He makes me sign." The words were scratched into the wall in thin, uneven strokes. Below them, a set of initials. LG. Nathan exhaled shakily. "Lisa." He turned his light toward the floor again. A small metal bracelet lay half buried in the dirt. He picked it up, brushing off the grime. A tiny engraving gleamed beneath the dust. TG. His heart sank. Tommy Green. Echo nosed at the bracelet, whimpering. Nathan pocketed it carefully, swallowing down the ache that rose in his throat. The flashlight flickered. He smacked it lightly, and the beam steadied again, but in that brief stutter of darkness he thought he saw something move near the far end of the room. "Hello?" he called out, raising his voice slightly. "This is Officer Nathan Cole. If anyone's here, identify yourself." Silence. Then the drip, drip, drip resumed, mocking the stillness. He edged closer to the back wall, where an iron support beam met the stone foundation. There was a faint draft coming from behind it. He shone his light lower and spotted a crack in the wall, narrow but deliberate, like a hidden doorway partially sealed with mortar. "Someone's built something behind here," he said under his breath. He pressed against it. It shifted slightly but didn't give. He could hear Echo pacing behind him, restless. He'd need backup to dig through, but with the radio jammed and the signal dead, that wasn't an option. For now, the evidence was enough. Rope fibers, food remains, hair, bracelet, and that cursed camera. It was a prison disguised as a cellar. Nathan took one last look around, committing every detail to memory before turning back toward the stairs. But halfway up, Echo stopped abruptly. The shepherd's body stiffened, his growl low and trembling. Nathan turned. "What is it?" Echo's gaze fixed upward toward the cracks between the floorboards above them. Nathan heard it then, a faint thud. Someone was walking across the floor, slow and deliberate. He shut off his flashlight. Darkness swallowed them both. The footsteps paused. Then came another, a little closer this time. Nathan drew his weapon silently, every nerve sharp as glass. Whoever was up there knew he was here. He crouched low, pressing his shoulder to the wall, waiting. The footsteps stopped directly over his head, and then nothing. Only the sound of Echo's soft growl and Nathan's heartbeat pounding in his ears. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "Not again. I'm not losing another one." Echo's tail brushed his leg, steadying him, grounding him. Nathan exhaled slowly, forcing control. "We're getting out of here. Quiet." He guided Echo up the stairs, every step deliberate, the gun raised, the silence pressing like a weight. At the top, the faint crack of static buzzed in his earpiece again. Sophie's voice, weak but urgent. "Nathan? You still there? The files are gone. Someone wiped everything." He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the door ahead, on the faint shadow moving across the sliver of moonlight leaking in through the window. There was someone waiting on the other side. The dawn broke pale and thin over Redwood Springs, streaks of mist coiling above the frost-covered fields like ghosts reluctant to leave the earth. Officer Nathan Cole had barely slept. He sat behind the wheel of his mud-splattered SUV, eyes shadowed, mind still replaying the haunting images from the night before. The rusted chains, the carved initials, the blinking red light of the camera. Echo, resting in the passenger seat, stirred as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windshield. The dog's ears twitched, and his nose lifted to the air as though catching something unseen. Nathan took a sip from a cold cup of coffee, his hand trembling slightly. "Yeah, buddy," he murmured, watching the breath of fog rise from Echo's nostrils. "I feel it too. Something's not done here." He turned the ignition. The old engine coughed, then rumbled to life. As the SUV rolled down the dirt road, the radio crackled faintly. Sophie's voice breaking through static. "Nathan? It's me. I pulled fragments from the wiped server. One file survived. A GPS ping from Ben Green's truck about 5 miles west of you. Abandoned property near the outskirts." Nathan gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Send me the coordinates." "Already did," Sophie replied, her tone taut with fatigue. "And Nathan, be careful. The man you're chasing isn't working alone." Static swallowed her words before he could reply. Nathan turned to Echo. "You heard her. Let's finish this." They drove toward the western edge of town, where the pines grew denser and the air turned heavy with damp soil. The rising sun cast long shadows across the narrow road, painting the world in cold silver. As the SUV crested a small hill, Echo suddenly straightened, nose pressed to the cracked side window. He began to whine, low and urgent. Nathan slowed the vehicle. "What is it?" Echo barked once, then jumped to the back seat, pawing at the door. Nathan parked beside a rundown barn and stepped out, following the dog's lead. Echo's paws landed silently on the frosted ground, his nose working furiously. He led Nathan toward a cluster of shrubs near the tree line. There, half hidden under dead leaves, lay a wooden truck plank, stained dark red. Nathan crouched, touching it carefully. The blood was dried but recent, less than 12 hours old. "Good boy," he whispered. "Show me the rest." Echo's body stiffened. Then he darted forward, tail cutting through the mist like a compass needle. A few yards away, they found the truck, a white pickup, abandoned beside a dirt embankment. The license plate matched Ben Green's. Nathan's pulse quickened. The tailgate was half open, and the inside reeked of something sharp and chemical. He lifted the flap on his jacket collar to block the stench. "Chloroform," he muttered. "And something else." The bed of the truck was lined with burlap sacks, damp and heavy. He tugged one open with a gloved hand. Inside were rags, duct tape, and a half-empty bottle of chloroform. A dark stain spread across the metal floor of the truck, tacky to the touch. Blood mixed with the faint scent of disinfectant. Echo growled, his gaze fixed on a trail of footprints leading into the woods behind the vehicle. Nathan followed his eyes, noting the drag marks beside the prints. Someone had been moving a heavy load, or someone bound and struggling. "All right, partner," Nathan said softly. "Let's see where it ends." They moved through the woods in silence, branches crunching underfoot, the fog closing around them. The forest gave way to a forgotten neighborhood, rows of half-built houses left to rot when funding dried up years ago. Roofs sagged, windows shattered, and weeds climbed over cracked driveways. Echo halted suddenly, nose to the ground, tail low. Then came the sound. Faint, almost imperceptible. A whimper, high and weak, carried on the still morning air. Nathan froze. "You hear that?" Echo barked once softly and began to move, each step deliberate, his body tense with focus. He led Nathan to a 2-story house at the end of the road. The siding was peeling, the porch collapsed, and every window was nailed shut. Nathan drew his gun, signaling Echo to stay close. The air smelled faintly of rot, and something living beneath it, something human. He tried the front door. It didn't budge. He moved to the side window, broke the lock with the butt of his flashlight, and slipped inside. The house was dark, cold, and silent except for the faint drip of water leaking from a cracked ceiling. Dust hung thick, disturbed only by the beam of his light. The kitchen was stripped bare, cabinets hanging open, floorboards warped from moisture. Then, just as he stepped over the threshold, Echo began to bark from the hallway, sharp, urgent, and directed downward. Nathan ran to him. The shepherd stood over a trap door, half hidden beneath a carpet, paws scraping at the edge. Nathan pressed his ear to the wood. There it was again, a faint, muffled cry, followed by a weak cough. "Hold on," Nathan said aloud, gripping the handle. He pulled hard, and the hatch snapped open with a groan. The smell of confinement hit him, a mix of sweat, mildew, and fear. He shone his flashlight into the darkness below. 3 figures lay bound on the basement floor. Woman, a young boy, and an elderly woman, all weak, their skin pale under the thin light. Nathan's heart seized. "Lisa Green," he whispered. He descended quickly, Echo following at his heel. The woman stirred at the sound of his boots, her cracked lips parting. "Echo?" she rasped, voice trembling. Before Nathan could answer, the German shepherd rushed forward, nose pressing against the boy's small hands, licking furiously. The child stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Echo, you came back," he breathed weakly, and then began to cry, quiet, broken sobs that filled the room. Nathan dropped to his knees beside Lisa, cutting the ropes with his knife. "You're safe now," he said firmly. "You're all safe." Lisa's mother, a frail woman with silver hair and deep lines around her eyes, stirred beside them. Her lips trembled. Who are you?" "Nathan Cole, police," he replied, checking her pulse. "You're going to be okay, ma'am. Just hang on." Lisa tried to sit up but collapsed back against the wall. He locked us here," she gasped. "Said if I didn't sign the papers, he'd hurt Tommy." Her hand trembled as she touched her son's hair. "Echo fought him off. He ran for help. I thought we'd never see him again." Nathan's chest tightened. He looked at the German shepherd, who now sat protectively beside the boy, tail thumping weakly. "You did good," he whispered, emotion catching in his throat. He pulled out his radio. "Cole to base. Come in. Priority 1. I have 3 living victims requesting immediate medical and tactical backup at the Ridgeview construction site, West Sector." Static filled the line. Then a voice cut through. "Captain Holbrook," his tone sharp. "Copy that, Cole. Units are on their way. Hold position." Nathan exhaled, exhaustion and relief mixing in his chest. As he knelt beside Lisa again, she reached weakly for his hand. Her eyes shimmered with tears. "Echo." He remembered where we were. "He brought you." Nathan nodded. "He never forgot you." Echo looked up at Nathan and barked once, short and certain, as if confirming the truth. The faint wail of sirens began to echo in the distance, carried through the cold air. For the first time in days, Nathan felt something shift in his chest, a quiet spark of hope, flickering through the weight of darkness. Lisa's voice came faintly, her lips trembling. "He came back to save us." Nathan smiled faintly. "Yeah," he whispered. "He always does." Outside, morning light broke through the fog, washing the forgotten street in pale gold, and in that basement, among the ropes and shadows, a mother, her child, and a dog found each other again. The morning light over Redwood General Hospital was pale and cold, reflecting off the snow-crusted parking lot like shards of glass. The hum of ambulance engines still echoed faintly as Officer Nathan Cole stood by the emergency entrance, coat streaked with dust and blood. His hands trembled slightly, the adrenaline still coursing through him. Through the glass doors, doctors and nurses hurried past. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung thick in the air. Lisa Green, pale but conscious, was being wheeled down the corridor on a stretcher, her hand clutching her son's fingers. Tommy, wrapped in a gray blanket far too large for his small frame, clung to her, his eyes swollen from exhaustion. Behind them, an older woman, Martha Green, Lisa's mother, late 60s, silver-haired with skin weathered from years of working in the sun, was guided gently by a nurse. Her expression was dazed but soft, her gaze fixed on her daughter and grandson. Nathan followed, every step heavy. Echo limped beside him, his left paw bandaged from a deep gash where shards of glass had torn through during the rescue. The German shepherd's fur was streaked with dirt, his breathing uneven, but his eyes were alert, watching, guarding. A doctor, Dr. Henry Lowell, a man in his early 40s with kind eyes behind rectangular glasses, met Nathan at the hallway junction. "They're stable," he said, voice calm but weary. "Dehydrated, mild hypothermia, A few untreated wounds, but they'll recover." Nathan nodded, exhaling. "Thank you, Doctor." Dr. Lowell looked down at Echo, frowning. "That one needs a vet, not me. You should get his paw checked out. Looks like he pushed through glass." "He saved 3 lives," Nathan murmured, resting a hand gently on Echo's neck. "He'll be fine. He always is." As the medical staff moved the Greens into a private room, Nathan lingered by the doorway. Lisa lay against the pillows, her face drawn, but her eyes clearer now. The faint color had returned to her cheeks. Tommy slept curled up beside her, Echo resting at the foot of the bed, head on his paws. When Lisa spoke, her voice was hoarse but steady. "He wanted to erase everything." Nathan stepped closer. "Ben?" Lisa nodded weakly. "He found out I had been collecting proof of what he was doing. The drugs, the money transfers, the fake housing deeds. He used our home as a drop point. I thought I could stop him quietly." She paused, her hands twisting in the bedsheet. "When he caught me copying the files, he lost control. Said I betrayed him, said no one would believe me. He tied us in that basement and he wanted me to sign over the property, the accounts, everything under my name." Nathan clenched his jaw, anger flickering in his eyes. "And the suitcase?" "I left it with Echo," Lisa whispered. "He'd been trying to protect Tommy since the day Ben turned violent. I tied the note to the handle. Save him. He's the evidence. I thought, if anyone found Echo, maybe they'd find us too." Her eyes moved toward the dog, lying still but awake. "He never stopped trying to come back. Even when Ben hit him, even when he was thrown out, he remembered." Nathan swallowed hard, his throat tight. "You gave him a mission. He finished it." A faint smile crossed her face. "The first in days. He finished it better than I ever could." Moments later, Captain Holbrook, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a graying mustache and a perpetually tired expression, entered the room. He wore his tactical jacket, unzipped, his badge glinting in the light. "Cole," he said briskly, "we found Ben's vehicle at a quarry exit north of town. He's still on the move, but Sophie's tracking his GPS pings from the deleted drive files. We're staging a raid." Nathan straightened immediately. "I'm in." Holbrook hesitated. "You sure you're ready? You've been up for 36 hours straight." Nathan's eyes hardened. "I'm not letting him vanish. Not after what he did." Holbrook sighed. "All right. Sophie will coordinate from base. We roll in 10. An hour later, the convoy rumbled down the frozen back roads of Trinity Valley, the sound of engines muffled under the falling snow. Nathan's SUV led the line, his breath fogging up the windshield. The signal from Sophie's laptop blinked steady green. Her voice came over the radio, crisp and focused. "Nathan, GPS places Ben at an abandoned grain depot near the river bend. There are heat signatures. 2, maybe 3. You'll have to go quiet once you're within 100 yards." "Copy that," Nathan replied, his tone low. He looked over at Echo in the passenger seat. The dog sat upright despite the bandaged leg, gaze fixed forward. "You up for one more, partner?" Echo's tail thumped once against the seat, steady and sure. They parked just shy of the main clearing. The old depot loomed ahead, a decaying structure of corrugated steel, its windows shattered, the faded sign reading Trinity Mills and Storage. Snow fell in light drifts, the wind whispering through the trees. Nathan and 2 tactical officers, Deputy Jameson, a tall, broad man in his 30s, and Officer Carla Finch, a lean woman with sharp blue eyes and steady hands, moved into position. Jameson covered the back entrance while Carla stayed with the radio feed. Inside the SUV, Sophie's voice came through again, tension threading her tone. "Nathan, one of the signatures is moving toward the north exit. That's got to be Ben." Nathan adjusted his earpiece. "Copy. Moving in." He crouched low, Echo beside him. The crunch of snow beneath their boots was swallowed by the wind. As they neared the loading bay, a shadow flickered behind the broken glass window. Then, a shout. "Police! Drop your weapon!" Nathan called, stepping through the doorway, gun raised. Ben Green turned sharply, his face gaunt and wild-eyed. Once a clean-cut contractor, now he looked unrecognizable, hollow cheeks, unshaven jaw, and bloodshot eyes that burned with rage. His heavy jacket was ripped, one hand clutching a pistol, the other shaking. "You ruined everything!" he screamed, voice cracking. "You think they'll believe her? You think any of this matters?" "Put the gun down, Ben," Nathan said calmly. "It's over. Lisa and your son are safe. Don't make it worse." But Ben only sneered. "Safe? She took my money, my life, my business. You have no idea what that woman cost me." He raised his weapon. Nathan dove sideways, firing once. The bullet struck the beam behind Ben. In the same heartbeat, Echo lunged, teeth flashing, knocking Ben off balance. The gun discharged, a deafening crack, and Nathan felt a searing pain rip across his shoulder. He hit the ground hard, rolling behind a crate. Blood soaked through his sleeve, but he forced himself upright. Echo was still fighting. Teeth locked on Ben's arm. "Echo, down!" Nathan shouted. The dog obeyed instantly, dropping to the side just as Ben swung his weapon again. Before he could fire, a red dot appeared on his chest. A gunshot rang out. Carla Finch from the side window had taken the shot clean. Ben dropped, weapon clattering from his hand. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Nathan's ragged breathing. "Nathan!" Sophie's voice came through the radio. "You're hit! Are you okay?" He pressed his hand against his shoulder, wincing. "Just a graze." Echo took the worst of it. He crawled to where the German shepherd lay, breathing heavily, blood staining his fur near the leg wound. Nathan's throat tightened as he whispered, "You saved me again, partner." Echo blinked up at him, tail giving a faint, tired wag. Outside, the red and blue lights painted the snow in color. Holbrook's voice called from the radio. "Suspect down. Good work, Cole. Let's bring everyone home." Nathan sat back against the cold crate, snow drifting in through the broken window, and looked at his partner lying beside him. "Yeah," he murmured, voice trembling but proud. "We're going home." The sound of approaching sirens swelled, mingling with the wind as dawn broke fully over the frozen valley. The courtroom of Redwood County Superior Court was silent except for the faint hum of ceiling fans and the rhythmic tap of rain against the windows. The storm outside rolled across the gray sky like a slow, distant drum. Inside, the room was packed, officers, reporters, and townsfolk filling the benches. At the center of it all sat Ben Green, his wrists cuffed, his expression hollow. The man, who once swaggered through life as a local contractor, now looked gaunt and beaten, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. Across the aisle, Lisa Green sat quietly with her mother Martha and her son Tommy, the three forming a fragile silhouette of survival. Lisa's blonde hair, once tangled and dull from captivity, now framed her pale but determined face. She wore a simple cream sweater, her left wrist still bandaged from rope burns. Her gaze never left the stand, but her hand stayed resting on Tommy's shoulder, as if to remind herself that he was truly there, safe. At the witness table, Officer Nathan Cole straightened his posture. His navy dress uniform was crisp, but his left arm was still bandaged beneath the sleeve. He'd refused to take sick leave, saying he wanted to see this through. Beside him, Echo lay curled on a mat, the German shepherd's legs still wrapped in gauze. His fur had been trimmed around the wound, revealing the faint pink of healing skin. He slept lightly, his ear twitching every time a chair creaked or a door opened. Judge Margaret Lewis, a dignified woman in her late 50s with short iron-gray hair and a calm but piercing demeanor, glanced over her reading glasses. The court will now review the key evidence presented by the prosecution in the case of the state of California versus Benjamin Arthur Green. The prosecutor, David Klein, a lean man in a charcoal suit, rose and lifted a small black USB drive sealed in a clear evidence bag. "This device," he said, his voice resonant in the still air, was recovered from a hidden camera found beneath the defendant's property. It contains video and audio files showing Mr. Green coercing Lisa Green into signing over property documents while threatening her and her family. It also contains footage of cash handoffs between Mr. Green and associates tied to a regional narcotics ring operating out of Trinity Valley. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Ben shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. His attorney placed a warning hand on his shoulder, but Ben jerked it off, muttering under his breath. Klein continued, placing a pink suitcase on the evidence table, scuffed, dented, still carrying the faint marks of travel and blood. "And this," he said softly, was the suitcase tied beside a German shepherd named Echo. Inside were these photographs, proof of repeated domestic assault, falsified deeds, and unreported transactions. These items, along with DNA and digital trail evidence, form an unbroken link between the defendant and the crimes charged. Lisa lowered her head, eyes glistening. Martha reached for her hand. Nathan sat still, watching. He wasn't there for justice in the legal sense, though that mattered. He was there for closure, for Lisa, for Echo, and maybe, in some quiet corner of his heart, for his late wife and son, whose faces had haunted him since the day he failed to save them. When Lisa was called to the stand, Nathan's hand tightened unconsciously around the brim of his hat. She rose slowly, helped by the bailiff, her steps steady despite the tremor in her fingers. She raised her right hand, swore the oath, and took a seat. Klein approached gently. "Mrs. Green, can you tell the court about the night you were taken?" Lisa's voice wavered but grew stronger with each word. "He'd found out I'd been keeping records, photos, notes. I just wanted to protect Tommy. And my mother. He came home with two men I didn't know. They tied us, forced me to sign things I didn't understand. When I refused, he used Echo against me." The courtroom held its breath. Lisa blinked, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He beat Echo with a belt when the dog tried to protect us. I screamed for him to stop, but Echo wouldn't back down. He took every blow until Ben locked him outside. That's when I tied the note to the suitcase and sent Echo away. I prayed someone would find him." Nathan's jaw tightened, and his hand drifted unconsciously toward Echo's head. The shepherd stirred, then rested his chin on Nathan's boot, as if sensing his thoughts. The prosecutor nodded softly. "And did you recognize Officer Cole's name when he arrived to rescue you?" Lisa looked toward Nathan, her smile faint but full of gratitude. "I did. I'd seen his name before. In the local paper, after he rescued a child during a flood 2 years ago. When I saw his badge, I knew I was safe." Nathan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He'd never been one for public praise, but her words pierced something deeper, a quiet acknowledgement that all the pain, all the sleepless nights, had led to this moment. Judge Lewis leaned forward. "Thank you, Mrs. Green. You've been very brave." The defense made one last attempt to discredit the evidence, arguing the videos were fabricated, that Lisa acted under duress to frame her husband. But when Sophie was called to the stand, calm and poised in her gray blazer, she dismantled the defense with quiet authority. "The metadata in the recordings is intact," she said, tapping her laptop. "Timestamps align with GPS data and cell phone logs. Mr. Green's digital signature appears on every falsified transfer. There's no question about authenticity." She met Nathan's eyes briefly as she stepped down, a silent acknowledgement of the trust they had rebuilt since the academy. By afternoon, the jury filed back in. The foreman, a middle-aged man in a plaid shirt, stood and spoke clearly. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Benjamin Arthur Green, guilty on all counts." The gavel struck once, sharp and final. Ben erupted, shouting obscenities until officers restrained him. Lisa flinched but didn't look away this time. She held her son's hand and whispered, "It's over." Nathan exhaled, the weight in his chest easing for the first time in weeks. Later that evening, the rain eased to a drizzle. The ceremony was small, held inside the police precinct's briefing room. The smell of coffee and disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of rain-soaked pavement drifting through the open door. Captain Holbrook stood at the front, his gravelly voice filling the space. "Officer Nathan Cole, for acts of exceptional courage and dedication to duty, The department awards you the Medal of Bravery and Service." Applause rippled through the room. Sophie stood near the back, smiling softly. Nathan stepped forward, shaking the captain's hand, but his gaze drifted toward the side of the room, where Echo lay in a makeshift bed of folded blankets, bandaged but peaceful, tail flicking lazily in sleep. When Holbrook pinned the medal to his uniform, Nathan only nodded and said quietly, "This belongs to both of us." Afterward, Sophie approached, her hair still damp from the rain, her dark blazer clinging lightly to her frame. "You should be proud, Nathan," she said softly. "You saved them. You saved yourself, too." He gave a faint smile. "It wasn't just me." She looked toward Echo, then back at him. "I meant what I said before. I still care for you, always will, but maybe this—" She gestured toward the sleeping shepherd and the open case file on the desk. "Maybe this was what you needed to find peace." Nathan didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on the quiet rise and fall of Echo's chest. "Maybe," he said finally, "maybe healing doesn't always come from people. Sometimes it comes on 4 legs, wearing scars." Sophie nodded, her eyes glistening. "Then I hope he keeps healing you, Nathan." He smiled faintly. "He already has." Outside, thunder rumbled softly in the distance, fading into silence. Nathan knelt beside Echo, brushing a hand over the shepherd's fur. The dog stirred, opening one golden eye. "Rest easy, partner," Nathan whispered. "We're finally home." Echo's tail thumped once, steady and sure. Spring came slowly to Redwood Springs, brushing away the last traces of winter. The snow had melted from the park paths, replaced by tiny blossoms that dared to bloom through the damp soil. Sunlight glimmered across the old wooden benches, warming the air with the smell of pine and grass. It had been 3 months since the trial. 3 months since Echo, once a trembling, broken creature, had led Nathan to a family in the dark. And now, the same park where it all began was filled with quiet laughter and peace. A new sign stood near the bench where Nathan had first found the German shepherd, restored, varnished, and surrounded by flowers planted by volunteers from the local rescue center. The brass plaque glowed under the sunlight. It read, "For every soul that waited and was found." Nathan stood before it, his dark navy uniform pressed and immaculate, though a softness lingered in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The faint scar on his shoulder peeked above his collar when the breeze caught his jacket. Echo sat beside him, tail sweeping lazily across the ground, his coat thick and shining again. The once empty gaze had been replaced by a quiet strength, the kind born only from survival. Round his neck hung a polished tag engraved with his new title, K9 Unit, Echo. In his hand, Nathan held a small velvet box. He opened it, the sunlight catching the medal inside, the Bravery and Service Award. He knelt beside Echo. "You earned this more than I did," Nathan said softly, clipping the medal to the dog's collar. Echo tilted his head, then leaned forward to press his nose against Nathan's palm, as if to say, "We did it together." The sound of a child's laughter pulled Nathan's gaze toward the playground. Tommy Green, now brighter, stronger, and full of energy, ran across the grass chasing a frisbee. Echo's ears perked, and before Nathan could speak, the shepherd bounded off, muscles coiled with strength renewed. He leapt across the lawn, caught the frisbee midair, and landed gracefully to a chorus of cheers from Tommy. "Good boy, Echo," Tommy shouted, his voice clear and joyous. From a nearby picnic table, Lisa Green watched with a soft smile. She looked healthier now, her hair tied neatly back, her posture relaxed. Gone was the trembling uncertainty. In its place was quiet confidence. She wore a light denim jacket, sleeves rolled up, a symbol of someone learning to rebuild. Beside her sat Martha, wearing a cream cardigan and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her face from the sun. She was slicing apples and handing them to Tommy every time he ran past. Nathan walked over, boots crunching softly on the gravel path. Lisa stood as he approached. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, smiling warmly. "I couldn't miss it," Nathan replied. "Echo wouldn't forgive me." Lisa laughed, the sound light and melodic. He's been waiting all morning. Tommy calls this his victory park now. Nathan looked toward the boy and the dog tumbling together on the grass. He deserves it, he said quietly. They both do. They stood side by side for a moment, watching the sunlight dance through the trees. Lisa spoke first. I heard they approved Echo's full reinstatement? Nathan nodded, glancing down at the dog now sprawled in the grass, Tommy resting against his side. Yeah, he's officially back in service, but this time it's different. He's not just a canine anymore, he's my partner. Lisa's smile softened. He always was. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet of the park wrapped around them, the breeze rustling through the pines, the far-off chirp of sparrows blending with the laughter of a child. Martha called out from the table, waving. Officer Cole! I saved you a sandwich before Tommy eats them all. Nathan chuckled, lifting a hand in thanks. He joined them at the table, removing his jacket and laying it across the bench. The warmth of the day sank into his skin, and for the first time in a long while he felt completely present, not haunted by ghosts, not weighed down by regret. As they ate, Tommy bounded over, holding up the frisbee proudly. Officer Cole, watch me throw it this time. Bet Echo catches it again. Nathan smiled, rising to his feet. All right, kiddo. Let's see what you've got. Tommy threw with all his strength. The frisbee wobbled through the air, landing halfway across the field. Echo barked once and sprinted after it, kicking up grass and sunlight as he ran. The metal glinted on his collar, catching the light each time he leapt. Lisa watched them, her eyes shining. You know, she said softly, when I was in that basement, I thought we'd never see daylight again. I thought the world had forgotten us, but now. She gestured toward her son and the dog. Now it feels like the world remembered. Nathan turned to her. No one's ever truly forgotten, he said. Not if someone's still willing to listen, even to the smallest cry for help. Sometimes it comes from a child, sometimes from a mother, and sometimes from a dog tied to a bench. Lisa's hand brushed his arm gently, a silent thank you. Echo returned then, panting and triumphant, dropping the frisbee at Nathan's feet. Tommy laughed, flopping onto the grass beside him. Nathan crouched, scratching behind Echo's ears. Good boy, he murmured. The shepherd closed his eyes briefly, leaning into the touch. As the afternoon sun stretched across the field, painting everything gold, Nathan stood back and let himself simply watch. Lisa and her family laughing together, Echo and Tommy rolling in the grass, and the park alive with the sounds of renewal. The same place where despair had once sat waiting now carried hope in every corner. Nathan took one last look at the memorial plaque glinting in the distance. For every soul that waited and was found. He smiled, a quiet peace settling over him. Guess that includes both of us, partner, he said under his breath. Echo turned his head at the sound of his voice, tail thumping once against the ground. Nathan slipped his hands into his pockets and began walking toward the others. Behind him, the park shimmered in the golden light, a reminder that even from silence, healing can rise, and that sometimes the bravest hearts walk on four legs. Sometimes, miracles do not arrive in bright lights or angelic voices. They come quietly, in the form of a loyal dog who refuses to give up, a mother who keeps praying in the dark, or a stranger who stops to listen to a silent cry for help. Echo's story reminds us that God never turns away from those who wait with faith. He sends his angels in unexpected ways, sometimes on four legs and covered in fur. When life feels heavy, remember this truth. No one is ever truly lost if someone still believes in love, in kindness, and in second chances. The same God who guided Echo through the storm is watching over you too, even when you cannot see the light yet. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and type Amen to thank God for the silent miracles that still walk among us. May the Lord bless you, protect your loved ones, and fill your days with peace and purpose. And if you believe that kindness can heal the world, subscribe, stay with us, and keep faith alive in your heart.